We learned about rental properties, and we learned that a rental property is still somewhat within the domain of the maskir if he's getting a chelik of the profit of the business, like if it's a merchot or beisabat. But if there's a flat rate rental paid, then the maskir is considered disconnected from the property, and therefore the person who's also to have a no is allowed to have a no from the merchants when it's rented out. Okay, gewaltig. Zot the heilige Gemara weiter. Ha'omer lechavered. So this goes back to the sugya that we had many times already, when the difference between beischa and bayizeh. So the Mishnah says, "Ha'omer lechavered koinem lebeischa shani nichnas." Or Satra Shani Rekeach, then Meisay Mocharan La'acher it'll be mutter. And the Ran explains, the Beischa Amar, he said Beischa, and once someone dies or sells it, Ha'ashtalav basically. Now it's not his house anymore. Who didn't, the same thing would apply. The Nosnan La'acher Nami Shari. If the owner would have given it away, so again it doesn't belong to the owner, the house will be mutter. And the Lahachin Nakat Mocharan. The reason why the Mishnah discusses a case when the owner sold it is Lashmina on the Davka Mochan La'acher. He had to have sold it to a third party, not to the subject of the nether. But if you sell it to the person who you were matir, then it would still be osir. But where you didn't link it to the owner, rather, you're focusing on the house itself, or sadu itself, then it remains usher even after it's sold. And we learned to Ran yesterday that if you said both bayiseh and beischa, then it's only usher while it belongs to the owner. And if it collapses and the owner builds a new one, it will not be usher. So if you say beischa, then and if your house falls down and you build another house, even if it's in a different location, it will still be usher because you said beischa, any house that's yours. But if you say bayiseh, then it's only that house. And if that house collapses, falls down, even if you were built it to the same specifications as the original house, it won't be usher anymore. Okay, so let's see the head of the Gemara. Bayavima. And once again, this is a shaila we learned before, so it should be very easy and familiar. Koinim lebayiseh she'ata nichnas. I'm answering this house that you're not allowed to walk into it. Meis oishem mocher lacher. And then the person who made the nether died or sold it to somebody else. But he said bayiseh. Ma, what's the law? Adam oiser davar shebershusai l'chashiyetze mershusai. Now let's stand back for a second. In the case of the Mishnah, the person was answering it on himself. I said, Koinim bayiseh shani nichnas. So when I answer a house on myself, but I point to a specific house, it doesn't matter if this house belongs to Reuben or to Chaim or to Shmuel. In other words, even if it's sold, it's still usher because I'm focusing on the house itself. And I'm allowed to ask for anything on me, even something that doesn't belong to me. Here we're discussing where the owner of the house is making it usher on the other fellow. So someone said, I own the house, and I'm saying it's usher for you to go into this house. Here I want the isser to survive my ownership, and I want you to be usher to come into this house, even if I sell it. So what is the halacha? Does my isser that I'm placing on my house to you now, will it survive even after I no longer own the house? Right now, as I'm placing the isser, the house belongs to me. I could place an isser on it, but could I place an isser that's long-lasting that will even survive my ownership? Or not? And we had this exact shaila before, a couple of blot ago, and we were pushing it that of course you could ask for something even after you own it, and we will bring the same raya here as the Gemara brought a couple of blot ago. Amar Rava said Toshma. If someone tells the son, you may not have enough from me, and then this person dies, the son will yarshin the father, because it was quite clear that while I'm alive, you're not going to have enough of me. Once I pass on, you could have enough of the estate. But what if the father was very clear and he said, Sai in my lifetime and Sai after I die? So I'm specifically stating that I want my nechosim to be also to you, even after they're no longer my nechosim, even after I die. Umeis, and the father dies, lo yirashenu. Then the son doesn't yarshin. And if you remember, and the Ran's going to elaborate over here, lo yirashenu doesn't really mean that he doesn't yarshin. Of course he yarshins, but it's also no. Whatever he yarshins, he's not allowed to benefit from. And the Ran's going to discuss how he disposes of it. But whatever the case is, you see that the father's isser that he placed on his nechosim will survive the father, and even after the father dies, it remains also no to the son. You see clearly someone does have a koyach to place an isser on his nechosim while they're his, but that isser will survive his ownership even after he dies, and the nechosim will remain usher to a son. Shemamina. So therefore, in our case over here, where someone said, my house should be usher to you, even if I sell that house, the house still remains usher to you, because the isser will survive my ownership. Let's see the Heligarab. Boy avimai konim lebayise shata nichnas meis aymochre la'achemau kloimar denehidam rinon bemas nisan. Even though we said in the Mishnah, if someone said bayise mochre la'acher aser, the Mishnah is talking about hani mili be'oser alatzmai. That's if I'm saying this house should be aser to me. The matzi aser nafshei bayise, I can aser any house I want to myself. If I say this house is also to me, I'm placing an isser on the house. So it doesn't make a difference if he sells it, if he owns it, it doesn't make a difference. The isser is on the house and it remains also to me forever. But to you, for you to say my house should be also to you, that's a different story. Even if the word you use is bayiseh, so your intent is that you want this house to remain usher to Shimon forever, even after you no longer own it. So even though that might be your intent, are you able to do that? Who said that I have the ability to place an isser on my house that will survive even after it leaves my rishus? Once this house is no longer mine, so in essence, what I'm doing is I'm saying Reuben's house is also to Shimon. I don't have a right to ask Reuben's house to Shimon. V'hu adin d'miboyelei b'mefarish ba'yiseh shato nichnas afilu she'achar she'etz mishusay tefshid lai mahani. This shaila here in the Gemara is not a shaila of intent. The shaila is, can I actually do that? So the shaila is, even if I said specifically, I want this house to be also to you, even after it no longer belongs to me. So the Ran's making very clear that the shaila of a Gemara is not a shaila of intent. It's a shaila of, can someone actually create such an isser, even though it doesn't belong to me anymore. The iu loy mistabek vilishna, even where there's no doubt as to what the intent of the matter is. The vada pshitale, the zela oila mashma, uchademucha masnisim. That's not the question intent. If we know for sure that this is the intent of the matter, is he able to do something like that? Why should he be able to do it? Because here I'm not answering Reuben's nechasim on Shimon. I'm answering my nechasim on Shimon. But I want that it should remain usher even if it transfers to Reuben. So on the one hand, maybe yes, or maybe not. Even though Achim became Nafki Mershusei, since after I put the Israel in my house, I'm going to sell the house. Now my house will no longer be mine. And now it's going to be Nichse Chaver al Chaver. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. That's why Rava brings a raya to the Shaila, Midetnan Bechayav Uvemoisoi Meis Lo Yerushanim. That's why the Gemara brings a right from the Brisa that says that if a father says my son should be also b'anoah, he should be also thanks so much. It should be also b'anoah for my son to have anoah for me. Say when I'm alive, and say after I'm no longer alive. Lo yirashenu. And again, we said it doesn't mean that he doesn't yarshin. It means that the Isser will be there. The Alma, you see quite clearly, he parish when you say specifically, I want the Isser to survive my ownership. I can put an Isser on my nechasim that will remain in place even after these nechasim are no longer in my rishus. And I can do it even the hashta b'shus because right now they're in my rishus. So right now I'm able to put an Isser on it. The chivin the chiparish chay lisura. Once we clarify that if you want to create such an Isser, it works. Well, then we no longer have a question of my intent. She delay the when I say by Yiseh should be also to you, it's kimefarish on me. It's as if I said explicitly, I want this Isser to remain even after I'm no longer here. Because that's the raya from the Mishnah. Even though earlier when we had this identical sugya on Daf Mem Beis and Beis, the Chinan, the Gemara slugged up this raya. Because at that point the Gemara was still speculating if Bayiseh means to include even after I'm no longer here or even after I sell it. Even when the person is answering something on himself, when he says Zeh, he means that no matter who owns this house, it should remain Aser. When a mother says that, maybe that's not the case. But here we're not accepting that. The maskana of the Gemara over there is that even when I, the owner of the house, say by Yiseh, I also mean that the Isser should survive me. Because there was a svar that the Ran offered that Bishlama, when the person who's accepting this upon himself says by Yiseh, he doesn't care who owns the house. He's just saying this house should be also to me for whatever reason I have. But when I'm answering my house on you, I don't care about my house once it's no longer mine. I care about my house once it's mine. So there was a svar to say that Bayiseh, when said by the owner, might not be expressing that I want the Isser to remain after it's no longer mine. But Avadi the Maskon of the Gemara is that if first someone says Bayiseh, referring to his own house, should be also to you. What I mean to say is I want the Isser to remain even after this house is no longer mine, and in fact that works, and the Isser will remain. Zoktaran, very important.
Why don't we look at the circumstance? Not every time the same words mean the same thing. Why? Dan wil ik van allemaal, oké, gaat de grens ongepast in waarschijnlijk allemaal daar. Je kan, je hebt gewoon te raken met what can we kicking and
so I guess the Gemara is saying this based on a normal case. If there's some unusual case where context would show that I don't mean it, yes, so then there would be maybe a different talk on it. That's a good point. But how are you there? You should know the chitnan hacha, and again we learned this earlier, but now the Ran elaborates. How are you there? The chitnan hacha. I'm sorry. We're on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. The chitnan hacha. When the Gemara says over here, Imeis lo yirashenu, if he dies, the son doesn't yarshin, lav lememra, the kivan shenechasim asurim loy bahna lo yiska behem. You don't say that since these nechasim are also to the son, he doesn't even yarshin them. It says, what should he do? What happens with these nechasim? How are they disposed of? The son yarshins them, yet they're asur ba'anah to him. So it says, "V'yitein levanav oila'echa." He should the chashim he should give to his sons or to his brothers. V'im loy, and if he doesn't have any relatives, loyve, he borrows money from somebody, and he doesn't pay back. U'balei chayvin bain v'nefrain, and those who he owes money to can take these properties. So if that's how the Mishnah fears those, what happens with these properties? It's quite clear that he yarshins them. Because if he didn't yarshin them, then they would go to the next of kin. If he wasn't actually yarshining them, how can he possibly give them to his sons or to his brothers? A, and B is v'heich ba'alei chayvin bon v'nefrain. How would a Baal Chayv be able to take these properties? They belong to somebody else. So he didn't yarshin them. Elavadai nechasim didaininu. They must be his nechasim. He yarshins them. Elo she'eni rishai lehenisman. But he's not allowed to have enough of them, so he needs to dispose of them without having enough of them. So why did he use a lotion of lo yirashenu when in fact he does yarshin? But I did tell the ratio yirashenu lo yirashenu muter lo mehenisman kishar yarshin. Just like it used yirashenu in the ratio to express that not only does he yarshin them, but he can actually enjoy them and benefit from them. So the Sefer used a parallel lotion, even though it doesn't accurately portray what the status is. Tana Sefer Nami lo yirashenu v'lav dafka. It doesn't mean you can yarshin it. It means you can't yarshin it and enjoy it as a Yerusha. Frek the Ram.
Is he allowed to give it to his children?
Oh, that's exactly what the Ran's asking. The Ran once again is thinking of your kasha exactly as you asked.
Well, from all the laws, the Alugas must learn that Yishem means a personal monetary hanul, nicht.
So let's see the Gemara. That's exactly what the Ran is going to flush out now. The Chitema frekt the Ran. Heichi katani noisnon levana v'lechav. How can you say you actually gift them? Bishlam lava ubal choivin boyim v'nefroin. Bishlam, the secondary way to dispose of the properties is by borrowing money, and then your creditors are going to come take the properties. Shapir, that makes sense because there I'm not having direct hanor from the property. The balei choiv lav midaitai kamifru. I'm not giving it to him. The balei choiv isn't taking it with my will, with my instruction. And then it would be that I'm paying off my debt using something that's osher b'nah to me. That would truly be osher. I can't go tell him I'm paying you with this property. That's bothering me having enough in the property. Even though we said that when you pay off a debt on behalf of somebody, you're not entitled to collect from him because you're just being mavriyach hari, you're just protecting him from damage. If somebody else is paying on my behalf, but without my instruction, yes, that's allowed. But if I instructed somebody to pay off a loan for me, surely it's usher for me to ask someone who I may not have enough from to pay off my debt. That will mamish me being moichi the money. And a koinim is like, heck, there shall be moil. Elabal korchoi, what it means is just don't pay your debt. Ignore the creditor, and he's going to go to Bezdin to make a claim on you. Elabal korchoi Bezdin magvin lahen. The aval gav the iyum and meila masani. Even though if you just ignore your creditor and then Bezdin seizes these properties from you, you are indirectly benefiting. Lo yichbaslam. That doesn't bother us because you're not handing him anything, so you're not having hana. So that's why just not paying the debt and allowing it to go to default and then allowing Bezdin to seize your property, that won't be considered you violating your nether. If you're giving it to them, you're gifting it to them, hey Chishari, how could that possibly be mutter? You're benefiting because when you give somebody a gift, you benefit from their good favor to you. The also in that surely also you're not allowed to use your payers to be toyrim for your chaver because he's benefiting from you. Even though it's not costing him anything. The love lememra sheyitin lahemamish. When it says noisim levana b'lochav, it doesn't mean chas v'sholom that you actually gift it to them because that's surely usher. El shemara lahem mokain. You just tell them, by the way, v'omerlem nechasim elu usher elayaba. These nechasim that I yarshin, my father made them usher banot to me, so I can't benefit from them. The ein yedea ma eser b'hem, but I don't know what to do with them. So tulula atzmechem v'asumem ashetir. So you can do whatever you want. You speak to them like you speak to a Shabbos guy. Here's my fields. I can't use them. I don't know what to do with them. You know, you can think what you can do. Lav matanahu. That's not called a matana. Ela gavna the hefker. It's a type of hefker. I'm just saying, I can't do anything with them. And they come and take them. So that's not called me giving them matana, and there's no type of another.
What's my type of my?
So the Ran says type of is when I actually gift you something. If I give you as a part of a gift, that's the end of the type of sana. When you say a tip, you mean like tipping a waiter, or you mean like giving you a stock tip?
No.
Oh, so, but what it's saying is if I'm giving it to you, that's a gift. If I'm saying I can't have a new from, you might as well take it. That's the end of the gift. Thank you. But a gift means when I'm giving you something for me, not it's also to anyway. So I'm letting you take it. No, but you have to speak out. You have to speak out. I'm now allowed to take this. So that undoes the whole. That undoes the whole advantage of the gift, because I'm not better than anything. I can't use this. It's extra, right? That's when you leave something at the curb. When you leave something at the curb because it's extra and somebody takes it, there's no time of sanu there. The chain cause of a Rambam Zal, the Parakem Hilchos Nedarim, shetzorich lo idiyam, you have to tell them as follows: Elu nichse abi she'asar le'abu. That's it, but you don't give them anything. Also, Harambam Zal, kahidit nan le'ilminate. The Rambam treated it like an earlier case. Hagoyzel is over mace. So what do you do? Lava ubalachovin boin v'nefraim. You have to say that this is Gezel. I'm not sure what the case is, but whatever it is, the case where you weren't allowed to have enough.
The 3 large ago, he said, the Tata is in them. The Rambam, the Kesser is in them. I think that's good.
The Ran said Talula Atzmachem. The Ran just says Nichse Abba Shas Alaba, but you don't say Tlu.
Yeah, I
hear, but the Ran doesn't make the things because the Ran says the chain cause of a Rambam. The Ran is saying that the Rambam agrees to me. Okay, so let's see the Gemara weiter. So that takes us to the end of this sugya. Now we're up to a new Gemara. Tanan Hashem. What if someone said, "Koinim Paris ha'elu olai"? These Paris should be usher to me, or if he said Koinim Hain Alpi, another way of saying they should be usher to me. Or Koinim Hain Malifi, they should be a carbon to my mouth. These are all 3 valid ways of making an Isra. So the halacha is Asur b'chilufein uvegiduleim. Not only are you not allowed to eat these pears, if you would plant the seeds of these pears and grow new pears, you wouldn't be able to eat those pears either. And if I traded these pears away for other pears, or I traded these pears away for anything, if I sold them for cash, I'm not allowed to have enough of the cash either. And we're going to soon see that this might not be a deraisa, this might only be a derabban. So if you made something usher to yourself, there's no doubt that it's usher b'chilufein u'b'giduleim. What if I ushered something on somebody else? Boy, Rabbi Bar, what if I did koinim pears to elu al-ploini? So I'm not ushering these pears on myself, I'm ushering these pears on Reuben. Would Reuben be usher b'chilufein? Ma'u b'chilufein, what would be the halacha if Reuben goes and swaps out these pears and sells them? Can he use the cash? So we're going to see the Ram. The whole thing is abundant, and we're going to read the words of the Gemara that describe the Shaila, and then we're going to learn the Ram, which seems to paint a completely different picture. Mi Amrin, do you say Gabe delay by your own self when you're answering it on yourself? Since I'm able to answer things on myself, even things that are not connected to me, things that don't belong to me. So by the same token, so therefore I can answer the Giduleim and the Chilufeim, which are not even here yet. But where my reach to answer him is limited, because I could only answer on my chaver something that belongs to me. Maybe I'm not able to make an isser for my chaver to even be usher from the Gidulein and the Chilufein. That's one side. Let me just finish the words of the Gemara. Dilma, mishum the Chilufin ki Gidulin dami. Maybe Chilufin are just like Gidulin, and therefore loishna hu, loishna chaverei. So I'm wrong. The Shaila is not on the Gidulin, the Shaila is on the Chilufin. So that was the Shaila. But but to understand really the mechanics of the Shaila, we have a Ran to learn who will explain what's really going on. So the Ran tells us exactly what the rules are. So let's see the Ran inside. Tanan Hasam, the command prepare Kanoidim in a year. Kainim Paris Elu Alai, Kainim en Alpi, Kainim en Lifi, then also Bechilufenu Vigidaleim, Kloimar, Kol Shomer Echad Milashon Shalalu, Chilufein Vigidaleim Bechlal are included in this. So Dr. Rad, this is not what you think it is. First of all, we're not only asking the Shaila by Kainamais, the Shaila is regarding any Isur Hana, will the Isur Hana transfer to the Chilufein? And in fact, it's consistent because the Raya that the Gemara ultimately brings to be Poshe the Shaila is Tashma Me'amekavich Ba'arla. Discussion is by Arla. Arla is an Isra Hana that you didn't create. It's an Isra Hana Minei Ubei. And we're bringing the Rai from there. So clearly the Shaila is not really a Shaila that's exclusive to Kainamos. It's a Shaila in general. Do Isura Hana transfer to the Chilufei? So let's see the Gemara. Let's see the Ran. And of course the Shaila is not if you're allowed to swap it out. The Vadai Kol Shehu Aser Ba'ana Aser L'moicher L'chlipa. Everybody knows if you're not allowed to have an offer from something, you're surely not allowed to sell it. That's being handed from it. So that's not the Shaila. It's for sure Aser to sell any product that's Aser Ba'ana. If you're going to say that you're allowed to sell something that's Aser Ba'ana, well then Matzina Donam L'chametz B'Pesach. So now there's a value, there's a cash value to Chametz B'Pesach that's Aser Ba'ana. U'Lashar Nizko. Sheyachal L'moicher L'chametz. If it's mutter to sell Isurei Hana, well then Chametz B'Pesach has a value. V'amai Tanan Sha'Goizlan Potem Netashlumin. Why is the loch? If someone steals from me Chametz on Pesach that's Asur Bana, he's potter. Why is he potter? It has a tremendous cash value because I'm allowed to sell it to a guy. It's poshut that you're not allowed to sell Isurei Hana. So therefore, Chametz B'Pesach has no value to me. And any Yisur Hana that I have, I'm not allowed to sell. The Shaila here is if you violated the Yisur and you sold it anyway. So this question here is, if you illegally sold something, will the Kedusha, will the Yisur be toifis the pigeon? We have no suffix that to anybody else it would be mutter. So if I took Arla and I sold it, everybody agrees that the money that I sold it for, anybody's allowed to have enough from it. Because the Kedusha of Arla, unlike Hektish, which is typhus, it's pigeon, the Kedusha of Arla is not typhus, it's pigeon. There's only two things that the Kedusha transfers when you try to sell it. Avodah Zarah and Shemitah. I'm not sure. I thought Hektish as well. I thought Hektish as well. Yeah, you're right. So you're right. We're talking about Yisur. No, we're not talking about Hektish. That's right. Very good. Thank you for pointing it out. You're allowed to have a no from the chametz of Oiver after Pesach because they for sure don't have the same chametz that they had on Pesach. They took that chametz and they swapped it with a goy by now. So the chametz that they have in their rishus, we can assume they swapped out. And therefore it's mutter. So clearly, once someone does swap it out, for a third party who didn't do the avera of swapping it out, for sure it will be mutter. Because the kedusha, the Isra Hana, does not transfer over to the thing that you swapped it out with. So what is the question? You're not allowed to swap it out. It's mutter to anybody else. So the shaila is, the whole shaila is since you were over an avera and you went and swapped out something that you weren't allowed to because you weren't allowed to have enough from it. Now that you did it, are we going to cancel you that you're not allowed to have hana from that you got in exchange for the Isra Hana? And now we can delve into the lumdus of the suffix, whether or not the Rabbanan saw fit to answer this midrabanan. Mi amrinan, do you say the chit nan b'masnisin asur b'chilufein v'gidulein? When the Mishnah tells us that if you accept an Isra upon yourself, it's also for you to have a no, not only from the parish itself that you answered, but even from the Chilufin and the Gidulin. What is the reason for that? What is the reason for the Mishnah that says that if I accept an Isra upon myself, the Chilufin and the Gidulin will also be ushered to me? Hainu Mishum Shekavonas Hanoida Bekach is the reason not because of a Gzeira Derabanan, it's because I accepted upon myself Isser even from the Chalufin and even from the Gedulin. The Imishum Kavanosahu, if the only reason why we're saying why the Mishnah said it's Usser is because that was my intent in making the neder, well then Dafka Noider Oyser Atzma Bekach. I can ask for myself, the Nehide Chilufeyan, Kedover Shaloi Bolo Oilam Damu, even though the Chilufeyan are Dover Shaloi Bolo Oilam, Lagabe today, because Lagabe me, this is not here the Chilufeyan. The Isra no is here, not anything that I would swap it for. Nevertheless, Matzi Asar, or Lagabe today Matzi Asar, I can ask for that upon myself. Aval Lagabe Chavere Le Matzi Asar, which is the Lashon HaGemara. Oy Dilma, or maybe it's Asar even if I ask my parents on somebody else. Oy Dilma, the Chitnan b'Masnisin Asar b'Chilufeyan, Lav Bosadati Aslihan. The reason why the Mishnah says that I'm not allowed to have an off from the Chilufein is not because that was my intent and I made an Isser on that, which I'm able to do. No. Ela the Hacha, Hachihu, let's see what the Yudal says. Ela Hacha, Ela the Dina Hachi, that's the Din. It has nothing to do with me being Makabal and Isser on the Chilufin. Rather, the halach is that if I swap something out, the Rabbanan say I'm not allowed to have a no from when I swapped it out. The Choli Surah Hano Chilufun Asur Midrabanan Lamachal Batzmai. There's a Kanas Derabanan that if you violate an Isra no and you sell what's Asur Bano, we're going to counsel you that you're not allowed to have a no even from the money. Hilchach, if that's the reason, then Loish Nahu v'Loish Nachavera. So that is the question: is the Isra on the Chilufin that the Mishnah talks about only on me because I was the one who made this neder and I'm accepting that Isra upon myself? Therefore, if I made the Isra to somebody else, it will not be usher for them. Or is the reason for the Isra because of their abundance, because I was over and I wrongfully swapped it out? And if that's the reason, then it should apply equally to me ushering pairs on somebody else.
I can't ask on somebody.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what's but if it's a Xer Rabbanon, that since you were over and you sold something that was usher bano, the Rabbanon can make an Isra on whoever they want.
On somebody else?
Yeah, the Rabban will say, if you're over in Avera and you're over by selling an Isra Noah, we're going to ask you from having a Noah, even from the money that you got for it. Midaraisa, for sure it's Motabano. Our Shiloh is there an Isra Rabbanon. Could be, because that's the Shiloh over here. The Shiloh over here is there an Isra Rabbanon? Because for sure there's no Isra Deraisa. Ram, I have a problem with why Rami focused his question in this fashion. At the boy Rama b'mudar, Rami's only asking about the person who I asked her. The Ran asks, Rami could have asked the same Shaila, the same Lomdis, but he could have focused the Shaila on the case where I asked for something on myself. And how could the Shaila have been framed? As follows. Time of the Masnishan, Mishum Kavanas Hanoider, if the reason why it's usher is because that's what I meant to ask for myself, even on the Chilufeyan, then Afilu Chalifin Achar Chilufeyan Asur. So the Shaila should have been the same Lomdus, but he should have cleared the Shaila by me myself. And the Shaila should be, what would be if I didn't swap it out, but if somebody else swapped it out? So I didn't violate my Yisra no, but somebody else went and swapped it out. That could have been the same Shaila. If it's because I'm a Kabbalah upon myself, the Chilufin, so it doesn't make a difference who swapped it out. But if we say I didn't the Kabbalah myself the Chilufin, and it's only also because the Rabbanan are counting me because I swapped it out, well, if somebody else swapped it out, then I shouldn't be counted for it. The Imishum Dina, the Surah, then it's Davka b'shechlifan who? So this same Shaila has an afkamina when I asked it myself. So why do we need now to stretch the Shaila to a case where I asked it somebody else? The same suffix has other impacts. And that would be if I made the Isra on myself, but I didn't swap it out. Somebody else swapped it out. Would I be Asr or not? V'yesh loimer zokt deran achidish. The pshita leile rami the noider afilu lechlifan acher Asr b'chilufein. For me myself, it was pashut that for sure I will be Asr b'chilufein. The kibbutz shaparat bomar elu. I didn't say the chasai. I said the chasam elu shavino lov kehektish. I made this. My intention is to make this object that I'm answering, let's say these pairs, also to me like hektish. And you're going to see the Gemara is going to explain this later. But this is the shaila. Me, I'm reading that who? Do you say that you need the fact that I said elu to make it that the iser should extend to the chilufin? Is that the reason? And then it wouldn't apply to somebody else. I don't need my expression of elu to extend the isra to the chilufin because it's exer derabanan. The chilufim could delay dami afilu b'mudo asher they'll be asher to everybody. The chitnan elu lachlifan achar itzrich. The reason why he said elu is to say that if I made these nechasim asher to me, if I made my own nechasim asher to me, I even want it to be asher to me if somebody else is machloket. Because like the Ran says, the shaila is only for somebody else, if the chalufim will be asher. But for sure, for me, the chalufim will be asher regardless if someone else did it, because that would have been my intent.
If somebody else, or if somebody else,
even if somebody else made the chalufim and I wasn't over neveir, my neder still includes that should be asher to me.
So to me or to somebody else?
To me.
Somebody else was machloket.
No, that's not the shaila. Miu, Eina Chanami, there still could have been an opportunity to have the same shaila with the same student referring only to someone who is makabel dusha upon himself. What if he didn't say elu? He said pei sai, v'chlivan hu atzmai, and he himself was machal them. Then we could have had a shaila mal b'chilufein, because there I didn't express that I want the chalifa to be aser. The hainu dine the mudar, because if I just said pei sai, then I'm no difference than a third party. So we could have cleared the same shaila when my lashon didn't include chalufin, and now the shaila merely is: will the rabbanan count me if I have enough on these payers that I accepted upon myself on this or not? Elo, let me just finish around. Elo, lishna demas nisan be'elu adifalei kain early. But the Mishnah wanted to clear the shaila when I use the word elu. And if I use the word elu, then the shaila cannot be on myself. The shaila has to be on a third party.
You couldn't say that's all payers.
No. You could say these payers.
Just my time.
No, but you could say payers elu shali. I mean, he could have expressed it in such a way. Okay, very good. So let's see the Gemara. So the Gemara first starts off with an attempt to be posheted, which doesn't succeed, and then the Gemara is posheted from Arla. So let's see. So we are on the base over here. Tashma. I'm sorry. Omar Rab Acha Bar Menyumi Tashma. Someone tells his wife, Koinim Shani Dehanalach, you may not have any other for me. So I cannot give her money anymore. I can't support her. So I'm sorry. Koinim Shani Nehana. Oh, so it should say Mahana. You're right. So let's see what the Tziyonim probably changes it. The Ran is a Garish Mahana? Oh, right. So the Gerson probably changes Shani Mahanalach, exactly. So you're right. The Gerson is Koinim Shani Mahanalach. If he said, yeah. If he said that I'm asking you that I'm not going to be Mahana you, so the halach is how does she survive? How does she get support? So Lava, and the Ran says Kloimar Isha, the wife can borrow money from a third party, and then Uvalechayvin Boyin Vinifrain. And now Abachayv, the person who she borrowed from, can come and collect from her husband. So the problem is, my time of Balechayvin Nifrain. Why is it that the Balchayv could come and collect? And the Ran says, the question is not why he can come and collect. The question is, why can she do this? Why can she borrow when she knows she's just going to go get the chilufin from her husband? Lav mishum de chalufin, lav kigidulim dami. It must be that since she's not directly taking the money from her husband, she's taking the swap of the money from the person who's lending it to her, it will be allowed. That's one pshat in the Ran. But that's not so geschmack, because the words of the Gemara say, my timer balei chayv nefroin. That's not really the shaila. The shaila is my timer, can she borrow the money? It seems like the Gemara is asking, how is the bachayv allowed to actually go collect from her husband? So let's see the right hand side, how he explains this.
Because he owes her,
So that's right. So balei chayv born nefroin. Then he the mitzri Allah nichse baila. Even though she's not allowed to have a no from the nechashim of her husband, miu akati shibuda anichsekai, but you're still a shibud under the nechashim. Hilchach balei chayv boyin v'nefroin. That's why the bachayv who lent her money can go collect from the husband. Even according to Chanan, who taught us earlier in the Masechta, that mefarnis ishtay shel chaveroi is a niach ma'osav al keren. When you are mefarnis a woman, it's as if you wasted your money. That's when you're giving her mezainos, but she didn't ask you to borrow money. You're just giving her money. But if she's borrowing money, well, that means she's accepting upon herself a liability. She's mechuyev now to pay off a loan, and we have a rule of shibud de Rab Nosson. The Baal Choiv, who she owes money to, can go directly to her husband who owes her. Because there's a shibud de Rab Nosson. Zokteran, the Raj was a long shot over here. I explained it very simply. So now the Ran goes to the next. My timer balei chayvin boin v'nefroin lav mishum dechilufein lav kigidulei damu.
This is mixed up. Because a neighbor could do the job. The Ram Zuk is the Ram Zuk. It's only the Shabbat of the Nedarim. The people that have to learn the Shabbat don't tie on it.
The nether occurred when there's no shibud yet. Since he wasn't meshubed yet, therefore the nether is chal. The round seems to be, well, there's actually a shaila about it. That's a shaila in and of itself. Would this work after the nesuin? Right, Rabbi Kivek, I think, is a tzarchin over here. Imaskinon the nisis savra the kibla. Shom askinon the nisis savra the kibla. The reason why it works is if he asked her, then when she made nesuin accepting that she's also bana. That's what the Rabbi Kivek says. Over tzarchin. So I'm not sure. So the Ran Amalal, let's think he says it's speaking b'shadir ba'odah rusa. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to make another.
I remember yesterday
that a kohen could be moitzi b'dei shibud. I'm not sure about this shibud. Could be the shibud of a ksuba is a stronger shibud, because we once learned that the shibud of a ksuba is a stronger shibud. But I'll have to look into that. It's a very good order. Okay, so let's see what the Ran says over here. Zok the heilige Ran, ma time about chayvin boim in the phone, lav mishum the chilufei lav kigiduloidam. The Gosoka daita, the kiv on the bishashi lova, mishabedis nichse habal. Since when she's borrowing, she's being mishabed nichse habal, mishabed nichse habal, hareik machlefes nichse habal b'nichse acher. When she's borrowing at that point, the Baal is meshubah to her. So by her borrowing at that point, it's like she's swapping her husband's money, which is also for her to have an from, with the money of the Malvin. Since at the end, the Bachoiv can go directly to the husband to collect. My time of Bachoiv Lav he gufa kasha. Even though the Gemara's expression is my time about chayvin nefroyin, that's not really the Gemara's kasha. The Gemara's kasha is the dulek yisur klau. There's no kasha why the malva can go to the husband. Why can't he go to the husband? There's no isra on him. There's isra on her. So the raya really is al hachik amar kiven de lebesoif Balechoiv boim v'nefroin, since at the end her malva will collect from her husband, which will give her an indirect hana. The question is how you can allow her to borrow in the first place. Kach Pishu Rabbeisai. So my Rebbe's learned this Gemara a little bit not geschmack, because the question of the Gemara, my time of Balachoiv going with my time Balachoiv Choiv is not really the kasha. The kasha is how is she allowed to put herself into a situation that's going to happen. Nevertheless, you still have a raya that chilufei in our mutter. But the Ran wants to make it more geschmack and say it's actually a raya. That's actually the Gemara's question. How could the Bachoiv come and collect? Near the Hachikamar. If that chilufein, I like chidulein, which means they would be usher, how could the Balachoiv even come collect? The Nehida Medina, even though there's a rule of Shibud Rav Nasan, but Hacha Anan Sahadi, here, when this Malva gave her money, he for sure had no intention of creating a shibud, of lending money to the husband. He was doing this strictly for her. In this case, he wanted to be behind her not through the Baal, because otherwise, maybe tapping on in the Isser Anah. Because if he's only lending her because of the husband, weiter she's having enough from her husband. So when he lent her independent of the husband. Oy bazoi, how can he go collect from the husband? That's how the Ran wants to learn. And therefore the kasha my time of Balachoiv and Ephraim is the Balachoiv had no intention of having any shaykhs to her husband. He was only lending her without any consideration of a shibud from her husband from Shibud Rav Nasan. Oy bazoi, if he lended al daskain, maybe he shouldn't have a right to go collect. Elamai, it's mutter, and he was able to lend her al das to take from her husband. Because chilufei are mutter. Venerally Dr. We're running a little. I just want to finish. Venerally lahaki pashat law. My hach brisa v'lai pashat miseifa the mishnisan. We could have brought a similar raya from the seif of the same Mishnah that doesn't talk about a husband and wife, but talks about a son. The oimer of noi kodim shatan hanuli. It's non-beseifa, in the seif of the same Mishnah it says that, and it says the son could be lava ubachayvin boim v'nefraim from the father. Why? Why didn't it ask from there? Shum the iu loy hava kamachlet. That's not called a machlet. The son himself has his own independent kinyan, and he could be kind of nechasim. So it wouldn't be as much as a machlet. We wouldn't say we're literally swapping out the husband's assets for different assets. But a woman who doesn't have any kinyan without her husband. So the Gemara held, being that she has no kinyan in her own without her husband, when she's taking from him, it's literally like she's swapping out her husband's money with this person's money. Zok the Gemara, Amar Rabba, you don't have a right from here. Dilma lechatchila hu deloy the avarava. No, it doesn't mean it's lechatchila aser, but b'diavad it's mutter. We have to touch these words completely different from what they're saying. So zokt deran v'dilma lechatchila hu deloy the avarava kloimar kishuba lahachlif iser beheter lechatchila b'yadayim aser v'achalifin asurin. If I have payers here that are aser b'ano, you can't bring a raya from the case of the woman who could borrow that it's mutter to actually swap out pairs that are aser b'ano, because that's mamish you're swapping out itrano. That would be much worse in this case. Avozu b'sa shalovsa, at the point when she's borrowing money, avapisha bayil mischayev, even though it's been mechayev her husband through shibud Rav Nasan, ein kan chalipa yisur mamish. You're not actually doing a direct swap, a direct exchange for isur no for heter no. So therefore, that's why she can do it. Even though afterwards the malva is going to go collect from her husband, the everhu shenasu chalipin l'mashachla. It's happening sort of with the evet. After she does it, it turns out being a chalipin. So maybe if you're lechatchila swapping isur v'heter, that's usher, and that will remain usher after it's done. But the but in our case, where she's not really doing it, she's not really making a chalipin, it only comes out after the fact that that's what happened, that's mutter. But you don't have a raya that it will be mutter even after you do a direct swap. So Tashma, hamakadish ba'arlo, any mukadeshes. If you're makadish somebody, a lady with arlo, any mukadeshes. But machran, what if you sold the arlo, now you have cash, so now you have the chalipin of arlo, the kiddush b'dmeyan, and then you make kedushin with the money that you got illegally from selling the arla, harezim mikudeshes, it would be mikudeshes. So once again, you have a raya that the chilufin is not usher. So you don't have a raya. Hakanami lechatchila hudaloi the avad avad. Zok the Rab, Hamakadish ba'arla in the mikudeshes, machan mikudeshes b'dmeyan, harezim mikudeshes. The Kasoka Daitach, the Gemara thinks at this point, the Kivin Shasr le Hanais Minachalipin, since it's usher to have a no from the money that you swapped out for the Arla, Afilu Over Benahena, Shechlifan Ba'acher, even if you used that money and you swapped it out because you gave it to a woman to be Mekadisher, the Laba Khalifa Khalifin Asuran. Maybe the Khalifa Khalifin will also be usher, and the Kedushin won't be a good Kedushin. If you went and you were Mekadosh a lady with this Chalipin, Lamahi Mikudeshes, Gemura. Why do we say she's considered Mikudeshes? And we're not Mechayim to make another Kedushin. The Asiri Chalipin Midrabanan, if Chalipa Isra Anoah would be also Midrabanan, yeah, technically he owns a technically good Kedushin, but we would have required that he make a new kedushin with money that is his beheter. So you have a raya, in fact, that the Rabbanan didn't answer the chalipin of Yisur, no?
Well, the woman has,
because otherwise, yeah, that's also chalipin. The Rabbanan would have said you need to make a new kedushin, because midar Rabbanan it would have been also for him to use that.
Because when he gets the woman as a chalipa,
that's right. Because he's having enough on the chalipin by being mekadash a woman with the chalipin. He's having enough from the chalipin, right? The maybe even if the Rabbanan made a gzeira that you're not allowed to have enough from the chalipin, that's just lechatchila. The chalipin return. Maybe the Rabbanan wouldn't go so far. You're suggesting that if the Rabbanan asked the chalipin, they would have made him do a new kedushin. Maybe not. Maybe they would tell him don't do it. But if you did it, it'll be good. So in halacha. So what is halacha l'maisa? Is chalipin aser? In halacha, like I mean noider atzmai, the person himself making the neder. Damar elu, like we said earlier, afilu chalifan achar noider aser. Even if somebody else did the swap, the noider always is going to be aser. Behind the maslisin, that's the words of the Mishnah that says when you said the chasam elu, chilufein b'delay mar aser. Aval keshedir achar, which is the subject of the shaila of our Gemara, v'cheinami b'noider atzmai deloy amar elu, which the Rad says would also be similar to the shaila of our Gemara. Mistaver de lekula naktinan. We for sure go lekula. Why? The chiv and the b'chiyai gavno gabi yisur no the alma lekala memer the chilufei gidi delayin dami. We said earlier that there's no havamina. There's an issue there. Right, so here it's elamidir abundant ba'alma with the frishla il. The whole shaila here is it's a suffix if there's an issue there abundant there. That have a lesfeka there abundant lukula. When you have a suffix, if there's an issue there abundant, we always pass the lukula. And even if you purposely went and illegally swapped that isur ana, chilufin mutarin. Aval Reb Moshe bar Maimon's al kasav the Rambam paskins the per kamisha milch nedarim harei gidulayin v'chilufein are a suffix isur. Lefichach kaver also begidula peris elu v'chilufein. So the Rambam passes the chumrah. Rambam zal mistam lastume lekamon the per kanodim in New York. The Rambam doesn't seem to say an answer. So I'm not sure if what I'm about to say is b'chalal relevant or not, but I believe that there's a shaila when you say sofik derabbanan l'kula, is that if there's a sofik what happened and it's a sofik of this and this derabbanan, or is it also apply if we don't know the halacha? There are those who learn if we don't know the halacha, there you don't apply sofik derabbanan l'kula. So could be that's what the Rambam holds. The real subject, that's what we say subject works like. So yeah, so could be that the Rambam holds that could be the Rambam holds it remains a subject because it's a subject what halach is. It's not a subject what happened over here. I don't know if that's true, but could be. Okay, let's stop here. I want to just focus. You asked a very good kasha that if a shibud is broken by a kainim, why isn't the shibud of his chiv mezainis? Why will not that?